Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another week of the Owl's Nest, bringing you the bird's eye view of all the action happening in the Overwatch League. Of course, along with me, as always, is my trusty co-host, Jake. How's it going, man?
Doing good.
We got an exciting show here for you. Of course, we are going to recap all the action from last week, all the big moments, including the Battle for Texas. We'll also be talking about some changes that are coming up here in May. So we're going to be sort of putting on hiatus, taking a look at some of the teams and, sort of future casting what the rest of their season might be looking like. And, of course, we can't not talk about a legend that decided to retire and leave us. And then finally, matches of the week and talking about how the new hero bans may end up affecting the next week of play. But where we're going to start out, of course, weekend takeaways from last week. And I'd like to start with the, one of what was supposed to be one of our matches of the week. And I mean, it was still a good match, obviously, but Philadelphia Fusion, Atlanta Reign. The last time these two teams went up against each other that they clashed, it went all the way to a Game 5. But this time, Philly got the clean sweep over on Atlanta. So, Jake, what are your thoughts on this match? I mean, this wasn't quite how we expected it to turn out, though the Philly win isn't entirely surprising.
I think you're definitely right about that. I did expect Philly to win, didn't expect it to be so dominant. I think it was pretty interesting to see the Ashe come out so much in this match. Over the other hit scan choices, it seems like the recent buff to Ashe is pretty significant. It's like 3 different stats buffed all at once, all making her like more fluid and just more effective to use overall. And I just feel like Carpe seized that and absolutely destroyed on the hero. Baby had good moments too, but it felt that overall the Fusion just had like better usage of the hero, better game plans around it.
Now, McCree and Widowmaker were, of course, once again banned out for the hero usage, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But, overall, what are your thoughts on the Ashe being so much more dominant than the McCree or the Widowmaker? I mean, do you think that this is something that we're going to continue to see going forward, or might have this just been a one-off for Atlanta and Philly?
Well, no, I think it's very, very possible we'll see a lot more Ashe. She's always been a hero that I think everyone said, oh yeah, she's decent, she's just not as good as McCree or Widow. But the kind of buff she got is exactly what she needs to compete. It's just like her raw damage is now just a little bit better, a little bit more sustained. The reloading a couple shots is a lot quicker now. Reloading like your whole mag is about the same speed, but when you just have to do those emergency reloads to keep fighting, that's a lot quicker now, and that makes a big difference, I think, in the long run. As well, you can use the hipfire a little bit quicker. So just that's just the nature of Overwatch, right? Like you can buff a hero, and a hero just feels like it's not quite good enough. It's not quite good enough. Keeps getting buffed, and then one day you wake up and it's actually good now, and it's actually a good choice, dominant choice. So I think Ashe might finally be in that place to like properly compete with the other hit scan. It'd be a good pick.
Well, it was definitely a show to watch, and the league, I think, overall could always use more Bobs. Now, another one of the matches that we had outlined last week was the Shanghai versus Seoul match. This was another one that I think didn't quite go the way that we expected it to. Shanghai with the clean sweep over the Seoul Dynasty. Jake, talk to me about this match here. I mean, now that we've got to see Seoul a little bit more in action, it gives us a better sort of overall picture of what the Western teams the Eastern teams are looking like. What are your thoughts on what we saw?
I just feel like Shanghai had such great composition decisions throughout the match. So many times they were running a comp that I just really liked. I thought that was really creative. They're running a lot of Rhine Sigma with Batiste, May, and McCree. It's really interesting composition. It's playing against like a more classic Rhine Diva on a Lucio comp. They would just slow things down and focus the shield trade, and I like that style of comp. You pretty much just win as long as you don't die. And what that means from an execution perspective is that your individual players don't have to like make plays. You don't have to go above and beyond and open things up, which can be really difficult to do in a top level match. So because you're in that default win position, you can play passive, and that's actually confident. Like being passive is good. Like the enemy team is losing as long as you're being passive and you're getting a bit of value out of your heroes. And I just think Shanghai plays so well as a team that they're hard to pick off on an individual basis, and they're also good at getting that value on their personal hero that they're just constantly getting ahead in the team fight. Once they have control of the map and they're defending a location, it's really bad. really bad for the other team. I mean, so I just feel like they played those compositions really, really well, and they had great decisions in what to swap to throughout the whole match. And that's been a theme for Shanghai. Not only is their execution great, but so is their decision-making about strategy.
So taking a look at the standings right now, Philadelphia Fusion are obviously still in first place as they're 9-1. Shanghai Dragons are sitting at 8-1, but they do have 2 more in their map differential, 20-18 over the Fusion. Do you think that this match was indicative of exactly where Shanghai is compared to some of these other, the South Korean and the Chinese teams? Or do you think maybe, this is just one of those weeks where Shanghai just really sort of had Seoul's number, and Seoul is better than what they looked in this particular matchup?
I mean, I don't even think, after watching this match, I don't think Seoul is a bad team. I just think Shanghai is like on another level, right? Seoul was playing very standard, very default things, strategies we've seen a lot before. Nothing really innovative or new that we haven't seen much of. So from that point, I just think Shanghai is not only playing better, but also they're actually innovating, which is a really scary combo to be going up against. And I think shows that Shanghai is going to be a team to beat in the playoffs. Like I honestly expect it. Like after this performance, obviously it's pretty early on. Things could change, but I actually just expect to see Shanghai in like the top 4. Like that, anything less at this point, at the end of the season, the playoffs, I think anything less would be a surprise for me. This team is very, very strong. I think they're going to go far in the playoffs. It's definitely, and I think Seoul probably will too, but obviously Shanghai just looks way better.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been a wild ride if we go all the way back to 2018 and where we are now with the Shanghai Dragons, so it should continue to excite. And then, of course, the other big match, I think from my side, from my perspective here, was, of course, the battle for Texas, the Houston Outlaws versus the Dallas Fuel. This definitely did not disappoint. In fact, besides one other match, I forget which one it was. There was one 3-1. Everything else this weekend was clean sweeps except for the Battle for Texas. Went the full 5. Jake, where do you want to start with this match, man? I mean, what were your highlights? What really stood out to you here?
Oh my God, there's so many highlights in this game. It was pretty wild series, total knockdown, drag out. I mean, I was saying last week, like, gosh, I don't know how to call this match. Feels like this is going to be really close, and maybe I should have been more confident of that. Maybe we should have made this, match of the week, because this is that was the best match I've seen in a long time. Like the most fun to watch, most exciting. So it was a real pleasure to cast. I'm really glad I was on that game because it's just really fun to see. Outlaws obviously could have taken the series in many moments. Dallas could have held them off, more effectively in many moments. So there was big plays all around. Decay popping off in a huge way to get picks to keep the game alive in quite a few situations, and same true for Blase and Dante and Meko. Even the supports and the Outlaws having huge moments. Like, it was just such a wild series. Like, really impressive stuff from both teams. I actually think both teams played quite well overall.
Yeah. So there's a few questions I did have for you. The first was on Ilios. during the broadcast, you had pointed out just how quickly and how well Jexta was playing that Lucio and building that ult. And I feel like, unless you have your Reddit Lucios who are really, jumping around and going for those kills, I think it's a lot of times it's hard to see how effective a Lucio can be. So what exactly was it that Jexta was doing that made him so key to the Outlaws in those matches?
I mean, he just had a lot, especially the very first round of Ilios, he had a lot of massive heal amps where he's heal amping like the entire team is taking damage at once, and he's heal amping everyone at the same time. And also, like staying alive and getting good damage. And like he had his second beat before reaching 99% when it was 99-0. Which is incredibly fast. Like, it's not super surprising to get one beat in a Koth round. Like, that's a little below average, but to get 2 beats halfway through the Koth round is really, really crazy. Like really insanely fast. I do think he slipped up just a little bit in terms of ultimate counting, because he beated before the Nanoblade came out and when Outlaws were up 99-0. And I think that ended up costing them pretty dearly as Decay kind of ran through them after the beat decayed. Didn't mean to say Decay again, but yeah. So after the beat faded, then Decay just kind of had his way with the Nanoblade, but still, it was really impressive performance for that first half of the round. Like just doing exactly what Lucio needs to do: stay alive, keep everyone else alive, charge your beat as fast as you can. just getting huge value.
Yeah, well, I think overall, like you said, both of these teams obviously played fantastic, but I do think that probably in the end, where the Fuel ended up getting the leg up over the Outlaws was by taking advantage of sort of these small errors in judgment. Route 66, which was probably my favorite match out of the entire series, after the Outlaws got full held on point A, and then just about fuller held the Fuel. There was that moment where they all collapsed in on Muma, who didn't quite get his Primal Rage off in time. Do you think that was just a matter of him melting a lot quicker than what he anticipated? Or, try to talk us through exactly what you think happened in that moment with not being able to utilize the Primal Rage.
Oh, I mean, definitely he got bursted before he was ready for it. I even watched the match back on my stream and saw that Decay hit like a couple solid shots on him. Everyone was focusing him. But yeah, of course, just didn't get the primal off in time. I think it's one of those things that I noticed a lot, like when I retired, was when I was used to playing on LAN and used to like the zero ping environment, that when I went online again and I was not playing on LAN anymore, I struggled to like on May, I would die before using the ice block, and I was like, I thought I was fine there. I would die before dashing on Genji, and I feel like, wow, I thought for sure I would be okay with that one. And I think that's just the reality of like you have to give yourself more buffer, in the online environment because of the ping differential, right? So you have to be less greedy. You can't go for that perfect, popping primal at 1 HP, max value play, because sometimes you get really punished and just by the ping, right? And to be honest, I expected that was the sort of situation with Muma there, that he was, just used to the land ping, and that to be honest, I think like online matches, it doesn't affect everything, but there's a few abilities in the game that are it's very important that it's an instant cast time. For instance, like detonating the Junkrat tire, or ice blocking on May, or primaling on Winston, like things that are the difference between making a big play and getting nothing at all is the difference between a couple milliseconds. And for most things, like just doing damage or just going around the map, like those things aren't really affected by the online environment, but those instant skills are quite affected, I would say, by the ping. So definitely feel for Muma on that one. Decay hit some nice shots to burst him down quick, but yeah, it's tough. And rewatching that, I actually think the Outlaws could have been even more aggressive than they were, but because by the time Muma dies there, it's like the Fuel already have the high gun control with their McCree and Torb, so it's already going to be really hard to primal into that. Like you're already going to die fast in the primal, even if you get it off. Like you won't last that long.
Well, luckily the Houston Outlaws won't have to wait too long to potentially get the revenge. We're going to talk a little bit more about that and the Lone Star Showdown. That's going to be coming up here very quickly, but until then, guys, we'd like to know what you think. Share with us any of the opinions that you have on how these rounds win, who you thought was going to win, where you thought the mistakes or some improvements could have been made. Let us know on CheckpointXP over on Twitter and Facebook. You can also let Jake know over at JakeOW on Twitter as well. We'll be right back.
I think adding in a smoke grenade as something you could buy would actually be a big plus for Valorant. Yes, like, you can make it 500 money. Like, that's fine. Because
500 money.
Because that's the value of 500 monies, whatever their currency is. I don't remember what it is. Zenny, yeah. We'll just say Gil. We're going to stick with Gil. So you can make it cost...
Hey, it's Weirdbeard from CheckpointXP reminding you to make it blue. Help say thank you to our heroes on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. Whether you're streaming, drawing, singing, cooking, or anything else, showcase your talents and hashtag light it blue. You can find more information at our website, CheckpointXP.com.
Thank you everyone for tuning in and watching The Owl's Nest. Now, if you like us on the go, you can always download an audio version of the podcast over at Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. You can find all that information over at CheckpointXP.com as well. And make sure that you're giving Jake a follow over on Twitch at Jake_OW. All kinds of great gameplay over there, as well as breaking down some of the matches after the fact. Now, some more of the things that I want to talk about here is obviously we got some big news, some big changes coming to the format of the league as we go into May here. And that's a switch to a tournament sort of format as opposed to the the regular league format that we've been doing here. So Jake, can you break down a little bit for us exactly what we can expect going into May and what this is going to look like for us?
Well, I think it's pretty exciting to see the tournament format, especially because we get to see how hero pools have affected the meta without hero pools. And what I mean by that is hero pools have kind of forced teams to try all these different strategies and to practice like every different comp under the sun in Overwatch, really expanding what teams are comfortable playing and trying. So I'm actually quite curious to see, if you remove hero pools, will we return to like one stable meta, or will it still be a case of different teams playing different styles, having explored all these different styles? Now will it be easier to experiment, easier to have diversity from map to map and matchup to matchup? And personally, I think there will. I think there will be multiple comps played. There will be different takes on the meta, even with no hero pool. So I think, and honestly, no hero pool is still a shakeup at this point, right? Because we've been used to the hero pool, taking it away is like still interesting, still dynamic. So I'm quite interested to see, and obviously tournament play is always the most hype, right? Win or go home. Like I think there's just so much narrative and drama in a tournament format. It's going to be really, really fun to watch.
Well, there are some unique changes coming to this tournament format as well, compared to what older fans might be used to from like the stage playoffs. All the teams are being separated into two regions. We'll have the North American region, then we'll have the Asian region, and the first 3 weeks regular play will determine what the seeding looks like going into these tournaments. And of course, there will be cash prizes for first, second, third, and fourth place. But I think probably the biggest prize here is the fact that the bonus wins that come along with placement at the end of the tournament. Tournament champion will get an additional 3 wins added on to their overall standings. Second place will get 2, and third and fourth place gets 1 win. So, not that I want to get anybody's hopes up, but a team like the Boston Uprising or the Washington Justice could suddenly find themselves in a little bit more of an advantageous position, depending on how well they do here. But I thought you do bring up a great point. I've always wondered exactly what the decision-making goes into when determining a comp. Do you want to play to what your players' comfort picks are, or play more to what, the perceived meta would be? Personally, I hope we don't see an entire month worth of just McCree, May, and Reaper. I hope that some teams decide to stay within their the strengths that they've found. It'll be really interesting to see the difference as well between how North America handles that and how the Asian teams handle that as well.
Definitely, I think you're very much right. Can't wait to get into these matches, cast them, have some fun with it.
So obviously one of the other big headlines that came out just this week, surprising everyone, is the man, the myth, the legend himself, Sinatra, has decided to retire from Overwatch League. Suddenly makes his absence in a lot of these previous games makes a little bit more sense here, but I think it's definitely a big surprise regardless. Jake, do you have any insight onto what kind of decision making might have went into this on Sinatra's behalf?
Well, honestly, I'm a little bit surprised, definitely, like everyone else. But I'm pretty impressed with Sinatra. Actually, I think this is a pretty impressive decision for a young player to make, because he obviously, Sinatra is incredibly talented, and not only that, but he got his start playing Counter-Strike. I believe he was playing ESEA in Counter-Strike and having decent success. Obviously not getting to the pro level, but I think when he was playing that, he was really young. So he's got that background in tactical shooters. He's signing with the Sentinels for Valiant, and I think to leave the security of being a superstar in the Overwatch League and try and make your name a second time in a new game, that's really impressive to me. To go from succeeding in one place to say, I actually want that new challenge to try something totally different and find success again there. I just think that's really impressive and exciting, and really says a lot about his mentality and his mindset. So congrats to Sinatra, frankly. I think the Shock are like the only team in history that could lose Sinatra and still be a top team. But so I don't think they need to be that worried about this. But yeah, so honestly, I'm just as a friend, I'm just happy to see Jay like chase that down, even if it's surprising to a lot of people. I think to be able to like make that decision that is surprising to a lot of people, I think that's impressive in and of itself.
Yeah, I've been flip-flopping back and forth on it myself. Like you said, obviously he's leaving the security of, a very fat paycheck at the Shock and a bright future. But, when I look at the reason, and correct me if I'm wrong, that people go into the pro life, you're either going into it for the money or you're going in it, for the stardom to prove that you're the best of the best. And I feel like he's definitely got both of those out of the Overwatch League. You cannot argue MVP last season. The 2019 champions, he arguably, along with Super, led them to that championship there. You can't argue that he is definitely one of the greatest of all time. No one will ever take that away from him. And I think to achieve sort of that next level would be to be able to do that in a second game. Like, that's how you start to really cement yourself, not just in, Overwatch League's history, but in esports history as a whole, is to find that next sort of holy grail that you can go after and prove that you're the best of the best, not just in one, but in 2 or more games.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's ever really been done before, as far as even like a genre switch. Like, there have been players who have played like, Heroes of New Earth and then Dota 2. Like, that's not that surprising, because those games are super similar. But to go from a more arena shooter style with Overwatch to a tactical shooter style with Valorant, if Sinatra can find success, I totally agree. I think that makes him pretty indubitably one of the best. Which makes this so exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing him play, seeing what he does.
Speaking of exciting, too, another big announcement that just came out. The Dallas Fuel and the Houston Outlaws, we alluded to this last segment, the Lone Star Showdown. This is the first annual presentation of this. The two teams coming together to bring the Overwatch world and the esports world 3 solid weeks of competitive gameplay against these 2 rivals. And what's really interesting and unique about this is that following this up after each week on Saturday, there'll be a 3-part docuseries that kind of follows the behind the scenes of what's going on with these rivalries, what the players are experiencing, what they're feeling, how they're dealing with that, to give you that sort of human element, something that personally I think that all of esports is missing and definitely needs to do more of. But Jake, you also actually get to narrate this docuseries.
Yeah, I think it'll be really fun because I know like a lot of the players personally, and I've always liked this sort of content. Like getting to know people on a personal level, showing that to the fans, and just deepening the connection between the fans and the players. I really like this type of content in traditional sports, and I feel that it's not something that is limited to traditional sports. Like, it's a human thing, mm-hmm. Like, no matter who you are or what you're interested in, you always are most interested in the people behind it. I think that's just human nature. And this is a series that can hopefully, highlight that, can serve that need.
All right, well, we'll definitely be talking about that more, and I look forward to seeing what comes of it, guys. Coming up next, we're going to break down some of the must-see matches of the week coming up here on the Owl's Nest. Stay with us.
I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Well, we have an unprecedented outbreak.
Thousands of us walking the earth.
We might die at any moment.
Because we're under attack.
In which case, we must act fast.
Doctors are trying their best.
Working long hours and
always sacrificing
their health to protect you.
Well, I'd very much like to thank them.
Thanks, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Wait a minute.
What's the prognosis?
It's still changing.
So we have a novel virus and no vaccine at this time.
What should we do?
We gotta get everybody else back into their houses. We gotta keep them there.
In other words,
this is our lockdown, right? What that means is
stay in your homes. Make no attempt to reach loved ones.
and take a long nap.
You count me out.
You can count me out too.
Some people are immune to good advice.
You know what I mean? Those idiots.
I just need to make sure you fully understand.
Let's recap.
I'm begging you.
Stay inside.
Wash your hands.
And make sure you've got 10 feet of personal space around you.
Stay away from me. Stay away from me.
I didn't hear you wash your hands.
So think on this, lads.
When you're home watching TV,
Think about the
Medical stuff. Working for you. So I'm asking you.
stay home.
I'm in isolation.
Just stop the virus.
All right, I'll do it.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
You stay classy, planet Earth.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on the Owl's Nest, of course. Week 13 here coming up. We got some great matches for you to take a look at here. We're going to go ahead and jump right into talking about what they are. So here are our matches of the week. The first one coming up here on Saturday, 6 a.m. Eastern, a little bit earlier in the day. So, if you can't catch it live, make sure you check out the VODs. But that's going to be the New York Excelsior versus the Shanghai Dragons. Obviously, Shanghai are riding on top of the world right now. They just had a great, decisive win over the Seoul Dynasty. So for me, it's now exactly where are they ranking among the rest of these top teams, right? And of course, I don't think that we've seen them go up against the Excelsior just yet. So Jake, I have to know, another two, these Titanic teams going up against one another. Do you think that the Dragons are once again going to roll over another one of the big dogs in the league, or do you think that they're finally going to find a challenge in one of the other top contenders?
Well, I hope it's not a roll. I do think New York should be able to play them close, but I have to say I favor Shanghai with like how well they've been playing and how great their composition decisions have been. New York's definitely an X factor. Like, we haven't seen them much recently. They've been out of competition for a little while now, so they're definitely an unknown, which is honestly good because everyone else has pretty much fallen easily to the Dragons. So I think a team that's more unknown maybe will be able to do better, making themselves harder to scout, harder to prepare against. But yeah, the Dragons just look so insanely dominant. I would definitely predict them to win. My only question is, like, how good can New York do? I mean, obviously New York's a team that could definitely turn that streak around and get a win where other teams have fallen. They are consistently one of the best teams in the league. But Shanghai just looking on the next level. So I totally agree. This is the match of the week for me. So
with the hero bands being Wrecking Ball, McCree, and Widowmaker for the third time, by the way, and Mercy, do you see that these hero bands playing any sort of a big changes into what we should expect to see this weekend? I don't. It's kind of a weird ban cycle because I think Wrecking Ball and Mercy are almost zero impact bans. Like, those heroes don't really see playtime. I guess Shanghai plays some Fair Mercy, so it probably nixes that plan from them. But they're really, they're not that reliant on the comp. They just play it in a couple places and have success with it. So maybe that's a slight help to New York, but yeah, I think the McCree and Widow bans are pretty impactful, but it's pretty much just McCree that I think matters. I think the other three heroes have pretty much seen no professional play. Even Widowmaker has really fallen out of the meta in the past few weeks. Like, when she's not banned, you still don't see her. So this is just that power of like ranked coming in. Like, Widowmaker is always going to be highly played in ranked and high level ranked because it's Widowmaker. So it's like always going to see play time, but at a professional level, it really hasn't been dominant. So I really think the week it might as well be only a McCree ban. But McCree is probably one of the top three most dominant heroes in the meta right now. So to see McCree out, definitely going to open up the options as far as DPS go. Might see a lot of Reaper May this week. Is what I'm expecting. Oh, great. Of course, McCree is like the one hero that can really challenge Reaper at that mid-range because the flash, right? Like, that's a pretty unique ability. But when McCree's out of the pool, Reaper tends to go crazy, in my experience. Pharah could go crazy, but without Mercy, that pretty much kills that. We've seen a lot of the APAC teams run Pharah, but I don't think they'll be doing that without Mercy. But yeah, maybe we will see. I don't know. Like, I was thinking we might see like Orisa Sigma, or it might. But I think maybe more likely is like Orisa Rhine with Reaper May and Batiste and Lucio, or Ana and Lucio.
that sort of strategy, I think, will be really strong this week.
The other match to take a look at, of course, on Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern, the Philadelphia Fusion rematch up against the Paris Eternal. Now, obviously, the rematch between Paris and Atlanta, which we talked about earlier, didn't quite go the distance like it did the first time. And Paris, of course, trying to rebound after that loss against the Florida Mayhem. What are you expecting out of this match here? Do you think we're going to see another Game 5? Do you think that Fusion might finally be felled? Or do you think they might roll over the same way that they did the Reign, following through with that momentum?
I hope we get a Game 5. I mean, I like close games, but I do think Philly has a big advantage here. They've just been so strong, and Paris has lost a little bit of footing, I think, from a really strong start of the season, kind of slowing things down. A big question for me is has Xe recovered? Is Xe back to the team yet? Because without Xe, they've definitely suffered. I mean, the other players on Paris are strong, but Xe was that shining light, that superstar that really made the difference in a lot of close matches, just being so sharp on all of his heroes. So without Xe in the lineup and Sparkle still underage, I believe, I think it'll be tough for Paris to take this one. It's possible, but I do think it'll be tough. I really hope to see those players in the lineup ASAP.
A few other matches to keep your eye on, of course, the Seoul Dynasty. They didn't quite have the match that we wanted them to against the Shanghai Dragons, but they do play both the Spark and the Charge this week, so hopefully we get to see a little bit more of what they have in store for us. And Los Angeles Valiant versus the Atlanta Reign should be another great match, two highly competitive, highly skilled teams. Is there anything in particular that you really wanted to draw your attention to besides our matches of the week, or anything that you're really looking forward to, Jake?
I mean, I actually think this Valiant Reign game is going to be underrated and really interesting, because both of these teams could be a lot stronger and then have had some struggles recently, right? But I think neither of these teams is giving up, right? They're both going to go back in full force. So I actually think we'll get a close match here with the Valiant versus the Atlanta Reign. I think that'll be really fun and close, even though they're not necessarily the very top teams in the league right now. This one I think could be similar to the Seoul Outlaws match that goes the distance, and it's just really exciting all around. I think these teams also match up well because they both like to play aggressive, they both like to brawl, which I think makes for an explosive matchup.
All right, well, guys, that's all the time that we have for today. Once again, make sure that you're connecting with us through social media. That's CheckpointXP on Facebook and Twitter. You can find Jake at JakeOW on Twitter and Jake_OW on Twitch. And make sure that you're paying attention to both the Dallas Fuel and the Houston Outlaws social media for the Lone Star Showdown. Competition starts next Monday. And you can also head over to CheckpointXP. We have an article up there detailing where to find all the action and how to catch Jake narrating the 3-part docuseries for the Lone Star Showdown. Until next time, guys, stay on that payload.